Nation. When they are ready, we're going to have them take it away.
All right, friends. So here's our plan for this wonderful book talk, right? So I'm going to start off with just like a brief overview of what we're going to talk about. And the lovely individuals to my left and to my right are going to talk about the four different types of Hispanic, of minority institutions. So the book kind of starts with talking about three individuals, Sarah, Kareem, and Letitia, and they each have different experiences when they're getting ready to apply to college. Sarah is someone who has support from her family. She is someone who has support from her teachers and her counselors in college. And so her transition to college was smooth. Now we go to Kareem, who is an African-American student applying to college. He has a lot more difficulties when it's coming to applying. His counselors in high school were not as forthcoming with information about how do you exactly go about filling out a FAFSA, how do you go about filling out the college application. He had to find that all out on his own, but he also faced struggles as if his parents didn't go to college at all. And then Letitia, our last student, faced some of those same struggles when she was applying to college as well. And so the book begs the question, how do we educate a more of a diverse nation, particularly for our students who identify like Kareem and Letitia? So we have four different types of minorities serving institutions: tribal, or TCU, Hispanic, HIS, historically black colleges and universities, HBCUs, did I say it wrong?
HSI.
Yeah, HSI, sorry. And then Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander institutions. That's a long acronym, I won't provide it for you. Okay, so each panelist is going to have 3 minutes to talk about their respective institution, and we'll start with tribal.
Alrighty, so diving right into tribal colleges and universities. So the first tribal college and university was created by the Navajo Nation. And what spurred this was, in 1968, there was an Indian Civil Rights Act that basically gave power to tribal communities. And just to give you a little bit of the statistics of TCUs in our nation today, there are 34 across 12 states. So we have 9 that are 4-year institutions, and we have 22 that are 2-year institutions. And may I add that all TCUs began as 2-year community colleges. What really drew me into the tribal colleges and universities is basically their focus and /or homage to the Native American culture. When it first started out, TCU encapsulated tribal languages and the history of tribal communities. Another thing that was brought to my attention is that a great percentage of students who attend these TCUs have a family background that consists of drug and alcohol usage. And within them embarking upon their college education, they are not prepared. And so the TCUs took it up on themselves to provide basically an outlet and also some math remedial courses. Math and science, i.e. STEM, is a focus of the TCUs. And so there were 3 colleges that were talked about. I hope that I don't butcher some of these names, but we're going to try to do the best that we can. We have the Chief Dole Knife College. It is in Montana. There's also the Salish Kootenai College, SKC. It's also in Montana. And then the other institution is in Wisconsin, and it's the College of Menominee Nation. Menominee. Thank you. Help me out here. And it's called the CMM. So I'm going to go through and just break down bit by bit what these institutions focus on to promote STEM. So we're going to start with the Chief Dole Knife College, CDKC. So basically they believe in 2 things: a safe space for their students, and with this safe space, providing the opportunity to apply what you're learning in class to a real world problem solving. Real life problem solving. There we go. So the way that they do this is they facilitate collaborative learning. So just like we are a part of a cohort, they create cohorts as well. And with these cohorts, they make connections and personal relationships. One thing that I found interesting, I know we talked about online learning. With this particular institution, if you have math remedial courses, you are educating yourself on a self-paced basis for your math remedial courses. And there are professors at your will to assist you if you have any issues while you're doing that self-paced and based tutorial online. One quote that stood out to me that kind of brings in the perspective and hones in the foundation and the morals of TCUs comes from Vision, and he's a part of the Confederated Salish and Kootenai tribes. And it's this: the traditional values that served our people in the past are embedded in the many ways we serve and invest in our people and communities, in the way we have regained and restored our homelands and natural resources, in the ways we have built a self-sufficient society and economy, in the ways we govern our reservation and represent ourselves to the rest of the world, and in the ways we continue to preserve our right to determine our own destiny. I'm out of time. Y'all kept looking at me. I didn't know what was going on. I was getting into it. So we're gonna move on for the sake of time to the Salish Kootenai College. And so basically they have the initiative to support STEM broken down into two ways. So the Department of Academic Success, along with the STEM career. So basically the Department of Academic Success goes into teaching and support staff by the adult-based education and the general education degree. The Department of Academic Success more so focuses on support for at-risk students. They have a 2-week summer bridge program, similar to us having Accelerate here at Ball State. And then with the STEM career, it's kind of similar to the previous institution that I talked about, with them going out into the reservations and actually applying what they learned in class. And another thing, similar to how we work with our practicums to expand our horizons and our knowledge, they have an apprenticeship model which gives them hands-on experience through laboratory research-based options. Okay, similar to our Akuhuai experiences, with this experience they have the opportunity to go out with their professors and explore like math, science, things of that nature. And they also have the opportunity to go to professional development, but it's more so STEM based. Where am I on time?
Go ahead, Kathy.
Okay, so the last thing that I'm going to get into is the CMN, the College of Menominee Nation? Menominee. I should have wrote Menominee. There we go. Okay, so they have two things that they focus on, which is STEM Scholars Program and the STEM Leadership Program. With the STEM Scholars Program, they have 17 credits each semester, and they don't have the option to take electives. And I thought that that was interesting. And with this institution, I found it interesting because they stood out from the other two institutions and that they had an option for theater. For the sake of time, I'm going to pass it over to Jerry.
Hispanic serving institutions.
Okay, so I always want to grab some takeaways from this. It focused on 3 institutions, just like the previous section had. But so there were La Sierra University in California, El Paso Community College, and San Diego City College. All of them were very different sized institutions, and all of them had different proportions of Hispanic students. So for La Sierra University, had 34% Hispanic students. And with that, it was interesting. One of the tactics they used, one of my big takeaways, was they used personalized coaching for each of the 500 students that are admitted to the institution. So each of them were assigned a personalized coach, kind of like an academic advisor, but it's also kind of student affairs oriented. So someone that would kind of follow them around, make sure to kind of do a lot of the work when it comes to mentoring them on campus. And then some of my major takeaways from this university was the importance of hiring full-time staff members to support and provide individual support to your students and actually have that be their primary job on campus, because you don't traditionally see this with small institutions, getting that hands-on full-time staff members where that's actually their primary job. Usually they juggle multiple hats at smaller institutions, but to see this was something that I kind of took away from this section. With El Paso Community College, it's a 30,000 student campus, or 30,000 students on 5 separate campuses, and it's actually 80% Hispanic students, so quite a large population, and their philosophy is really to educate the entire community. All right, so the approach they've taken to that is to partner with actually the university in El Paso, University of Texas, El Paso, as well as to partner with the high school to provide dual credit courses for students going to high school, so students have access to college courses their first year in high school, all the way through their senior year, to the extent in which some students graduate from their high school with already having an associate's degree to transfer into college. So their approach is much more community-oriented, and the way in which they've done this is to provide really close communication or close collaboration between the community college and the high schools around the El Paso area. So they provide transportation, busing between the community colleges and the high schools, and that close collaboration has allowed them to actually increase retention rates, as well as transfer a lot of students into their partnership with the University of Texas, El Paso. With San Diego City College, it's an 18,000 student campus, and 2/3 of the population there are students of color. The majority of the students are Hispanic. And they have a really big first year experience program. And they try to customize the first year as much as possible in creating degree plans that allow the first year students coming in to really customize their experience and focus on the individual learner. A takeaway I got from this is, one, the deconstruction of college. So the concept of taking college and breaking it down so that students see a transparent kind of pathway to success at college. And then lastly, a quote I grabbed from here is, "You've got to love them, your students, in order to get information into them." And that was a quote from a faculty member there, talking about really having a close connection with students.
All right, Asian American, Native American, Pacific Islander Serving Institution.
Okay, so first I just want to clarify, so AANAPISIs is the long term. In the book they also used AAPI, which stands for Asian American Pacific Islander. So they again talked about 3 institutions. The first institution was the College of the Marshall Islands, which I'm not sure if many people know much about the Marshall Islands, but it's near Micronesia, so it's really far in the Pacific Island, or the Pacific Ocean. It's a really unique place. It's a United States territory. It's really interesting. It has really interesting history if you're ever interested in that. But they studied here at the College of the Marshall Islands, so there were a couple really unique programs to get students started here. So the main problem that they found with students' persistence is that they come in, English is not their first language and the instruction is in English. So actually 6% of first year students in the classes of 2007 and 2008 persisted to a degree within a traditional timeline. So that's barely anyone. I mean 6%, that's a really, really low percentage. So a couple programs that they found to be really helpful for their students were the ABC Toolbox, which stands for Accelerated Boot Camp Toolbox, and that was like an accelerated English second language program essentially. So they really helped students to gain those skills so they could really incorporate them in the classroom. And the second program, the FIRE program, FYRE, First Year Residential Learning Experience, this was very unique in terms of where the students lived. So they actually lived on, I'm not going to get too much into the geography, but on these atolls where that the Marshall Islands are situated upon. They lived in a different city than like the actual, or not a different city, but at a different, like a satellite site where they lived together, they worked together, they built a really good, or big community, so then these students were immersed into the culture of the college campus to increase persistence. The second institution that they talked about was California State University at Sacramento, which is also called Sacramento State. People call it that, yeah. 1/5 of students there are recognized as AAPI, so Asian American Pacific Islander students, and a project that they found they being the researchers, found to be really helpful for students there was called the Full Circle Project. So it's really a campus-wide collaboration that incorporates curricular and co-curricular activities. So this is working with faculty, student affairs professionals, really everyone around campus to make a commitment to activism and social justice and get students a holistic education. So really allowing them to be active on campus, not only in the classroom but outside of the classroom. And then the last college I just want to touch upon is the North Seattle Community College. So they, one program that they found there is Washington State Opportunity Center for Employment and Education. So this actually is like a Washington State satellite location for this program, but it's on a community college's campus, and it's utilized by the community college. It's a very diverse student population. So this center, OCE&E, which is the Opportunity Center for Employment and Education, offers resources and services for students regarding personal and educational goals. So the kind of mission statement for them is to empower diverse, academically inexperienced students to find a stable place in a competitive and globally networked city, that being Seattle. They need to ensure that students are able to navigate their way through college to their goals. So through this program, they really have mentors that take them through and help them navigate the city and the college.
All right, and finally, HBCUs.
All right, so in this chapter, it talked about 3 different HBCUs, Morehouse College, Norfolk State University, and Paul Quinn College. I'll begin with Morehouse College. It's one of the prestigious HBCUs, an all-male private HBCU in Atlanta, Georgia. One of the things about, if you don't know about Morehouse, it has a lot of notable alumni. One, Martin Luther King went to school there. But what happened in the chapter, it talked about how they use a lot of peer-led team learning. So what they do is the faculty members will give the students assignments, right? And then they will have a peer team leader, kind of like a student, a senior level student, lead these group sessions. So it's kind of like study groups, but with more of an emphasis of we're going to learn this process, learn this subject, learn this topic, and lead that through there. With that peer PLTL learning, peer leaders were able to demonstrate strategy and show how students can succeed. So it was really beneficial for the students to build networks with senior level students, higher level students in the program, and it basically helped them grow as individuals. One thing that was really interesting was this thing called the Morehouse Mystique. There's a student here in the program, he went to Morehouse, and I asked him, like, what is this Morehouse Mystique? And it's kind of like this, I don't know how to explain it. It's kind of like you just got this aurora. It's like the, Kung Fu, whatever, aurora, Bruce Lee Leroy, right? You go to Morehouse and you're like, oh my gosh, he's a Morehouse kid. It's kind of like you can distinguish who's Morehouse and who's just Atlanta Clark or one of those local institutions. So that was interesting, to talk to them about that. And they're saying that, once you come here to Morehouse, you're going to be doing different things. You're going to think differently. You're going to have a goal to make a difference in the world. So that was something they instilled into the students, incoming students, and basically made them become who they are. Because one of the things that Morehouse does is they do graduate a large amount of minority students in biomedical research. So they are producing doctors. They are producing people in the medical field. So that is a huge thing. That's huge in the fact that, seeing African Americans going into the medical field. The other school, Norfolk State University, I kind of laughed at this when it said Ride or Die. That was the chapter title, the section title. I was like, oh Lord. So I already know about Norfolk, Norfolk, Virginia. If you've been there, yeah, it's wild, but it's cool. It's a public historical black college, University of Norfolk, Virginia. But one of the things they did is they kind of have this mentality of like, hey, we're Norfolk State University. You come here, you're going to mess with the whole group. We're not going to be singled out. We're not going to be alone. And everybody took up for each other. So it was amazing, so hearing that talk. They did, one unique thing that's kind of might be taboo for PWIs is that there's a link between student affairs and academic affairs. They kind of basically merged both departments together, preventing the whole conversation of like, oh, that's a student affairs issue. Oh, that's an academic affairs issue. We're going to serve, at Norfolk, they're going to say, hey, we're going to help you all together. From there, they have other things about mentoring each other, like I said, taking care of each other, which is, totally a family culture. Is something that thrives across all HBCUs. The final college, Paul Quinn College, I actually met the president. He's a pretty cool guy, Michael Sorrell. He's a lawyer by trade. He became president of Paul Quinn, I want to say in like 2010 or something around that. But anyways, he made some big moves, right? So Paul Quinn, if you know anything about him, they're in the middle of Dallas. They're in Dallas, Texas, in a desert, food desert, nothing around there, just basically the hood, right? And one of the things they were talking about is students were just coming to school just to hang out on campus. They weren't really students, they weren't really being, academically challenged. So what he did, he had to come in and say, hey, we need to clean this up. We need to get these students out and basically get students who will care about the institution. So he kind of had this saying, this motto thing called "We over me," the secret to retention. Basically, it's how the leadership is, how they lead. I mean, through leadership. So they basically say, leave places better than you found them. Lead from wherever you are. Live a life that matters, and love something greater than yourself. So those are the 4 things that those students at Paul Quinn used. There was a big uproar several years ago from alumni at Paul Quinn because Michael Sorrell came in and dismantled the football team. The football team hasn't won a game in like 5 years, and they were losing money. And what he did is he kicked the football team out, got rid of them, and turned the football field into a farm. So that came into the We Over Me farm initiative. He ended the football program and created this farming through the football field and basically fed the community, fed the schools, so the school's getting fresh food. This is huge, right, in Dallas, Texas. And it was more so preaching activism, taking care of your fellow man and leaving the place better, following the 4 L's. Another unique thing at Paul Quinn, being that it's a faith-based institution, is such as a lot of HBCUs, they are religious, started by religious entities. One of the things that's talked about, there's a professor that would start the class with a prayer, end the class with a prayer. And the ability to have that, it made the people feel like a family, take care of family is what they call it. So students would always, feel associated to, feel inclined to talk to whoever in the institution and feel free. And finally, like I said, I had 4. Do I have time? Okay, we're out of here. So other than that, ask away.
All right, what are your questions for us?
Yeah, go ahead.
So my question is, you kind of read a lot about different initiatives and programming that these institutions have put in place. So I guess if your own personal opinion, if you had to choose one that Ball State had to implement to really help the culture and community here, which one would you choose and why? It doesn't have to be from everyone either.
I don't think you can really apply it, to be honest, because a lot of these institutions that sell outside of the HSIs, for one, HBCUs are fairly small. The biggest HBC might be like 10,000 students. That's big, right? So one of the things is like it has this culture of family, right? And you really can't get to know everybody if you have 500 students to your one self and then another 500 to an advisor. So having these, well, speaking from HBCU, I don't think, or even tribal colleges, you really can't create these programs because there's so many students and so many different needs. So varying needs, you're like, it's going to be really hard to answer.
I don't know, something comes to my mind. So I like what the community college in Texas, El Paso does. In terms of working, because I look at the Muncie community, and I say like, do we do an effective job of educating this community? The answer to that, me very clearly living in Muncie, is no. So thinking about how we form partnerships between the Muncie school districts and like Ball State, and how much crossover there is there, and how can we better prepare our high school students and our middle school students to become college students in the future, get them college ready. What kind of crossover can we put in place? How can that become the culture of our institution to actually help the Muncie community? Like that's something that occurs to me. I think another thing that really occurs to me is I think we see these as institutional level things, but I think it's really like, how are we identifying the students coming into our institutions that might need extra help? And what resources do we have in place to give them, something like an individual coaching mentor? Like, can we give certain students or certain, you know, students from certain school districts or from certain backgrounds, individual mentoring or individual tutoring programs or individual, you know, coaches that help those students, you know, better transition into college and be able to succeed here. I think that that's one of the takeaways that I took from this.
I think just playing off of that very briefly is this will be interesting as Ball State is potentially taking over Muncie Community Schools. Or not taking over, but yeah. So I think that might be really great. It could be.
So a couple of questions there, maybe observations, or maybe they're not, maybe, I'm not sure, but. So I'd like to hear an opinion about graduating from high school with an associate's degree, and then coming to college and being done in a year or two, and then you as future leaders and hiring people into your spaces. Do you think students are going to be emotionally ready to work?
So I worked at an institution previous to this called the Illinois Mathematics and Science Academy, and we had residential high school students. And they were performing what I would term as college classes on a day-to-day basis when they came in as sophomores, and would regularly graduate with 2 years behind their belt, just by taking AP credits and really taking those courses. And from my experience, they were already in the workforce. Some of them had their own companies. Some were, you know, serving in internship roles that college students would serve in a graduate student, like a graduate student assistantship. One went on to do research with graduate students right now at Michigan State University. Like, I think that sometimes we form stereotypes of high school students in terms of where they're at emotionally and developmentally. And I think that there is like a level of asynchronous development. I don't think that emotionally maybe a high school student is ready in 2 years to go out into the workforce and be ready to go. You know, I think there's a lot of emotional development still has to happen there. But I also think that they're ready for it intellectually, and to have that crossover between, you know, what they're doing in the classroom and more, you know, what they're doing professionally. I see a lot of high school students already having that. So I guess for me, I'm sitting here, I think that from my experience, I would say, yeah, it depends on the student, really.
Yeah, it really does depend on the student, because I had a student who was applying to be an RA who came into our interview room and wowed the hell out of everyone sitting at that table. I mean, he was so much more mature than a junior who was sitting there who had been in Ball State for 2 previous years. And I'm like, you just came out of high school and you're talking with so much pizzazz, you're coming in here, you're speaking very academically strong. I was ready to hire that man sitting right there at the table. And so I really do think it depends on the student, and I also think it depends on how they were brought up as well.
I think it might depend on the industry too, because we're
Yeah,
acting on
true.
higher ed.
Yeah.
And, yeah, that's not the message I'm hearing from employers.
Okay.
Yeah, I think that there's just a lot of, I mean, if you take any psychological development class, they're gonna tell you that the brain doesn't fully develop until like age 25, so I think that there could be a lot of like pushback on, are they truly, or they might, you know, that's incredible if they're ready for the workforce, but are they developed?
So I'm not down on Nelly, I think that's great, like,
Oh, yeah,
I hope my
yeah.
girls do that,
Yeah.
because that'll make it cheaper, right?
Yeah.
But also what I'm hoping is they might have an apprenticeship, or they might have
Yeah.
a bridge, or
Yes.
they might have a something that would help move them to a place that would
Or-
set them up for
yeah.
success.
Or continue college.
So, I really like this book, and one of the things that I like is that in every chapter they talk about the need for community and family as a way to
Yes.
ingratiate the students.
Yes.
Yep.
And then I contrast that with PWIs, where the highlight is me over we,
Yeah.
you know? So, what I don't understand, and I have some thoughts, but what are your thoughts on how do you reconcile, though, what I think is working at the MSI and the we connection, but the rates and the graduation rates are so low, and then at PWIs, where it's all about me and personal gain and you know what I mean, where it's like do for yourself, and their rates are so much higher. So how do we bring them together where we can see those rates at the
I'll say
others?
this, it's all about numbers and how you view them. HBCUs, let's use this. HBCU has 10 students, 3 of them graduate, that's 30%. PW has 10,000 students, 3,000, whatever it was, let's say half of them graduate. You can play the numbers any way you want. But what does it say about graduation rates, right? It's graduating more students of color from these institutions that are for MSIs, right? I think there was a stat that said more students of color are graduating from MSIs than PWIs. So how do you challenge that? I mean, you may have the low enrollment rates, low graduation rates, but life happens, right? But you have more students at PWIs that can balance these numbers out. So for every student that falls out, you got 3 more coming right behind them. Whereas at HBCU or MSI, any MSI, you have 4 that leave, 2 are only coming back, so.
I think this book was extremely interesting, and it had, obviously we went over time and barely scratched the
Yeah,
surface of
definitely.
what was in it, so I think that we could have like a class-long discussion.
Having read this book,
Yes.
how has it, for those of you who are thinking about this coming up, how has it affected your job search? Would you want to work in an MSI? If so, which type?
Yes.
What does that mean? Do you feel as though you would have to have a particular racial ethnic identity to do good work at an MSI, et cetera?
I think
You
for me, I think coming from a PWI, and then I'm going to one again, I think when there is truly a value with learning from people who you identify with. And I know at my undergrad, I particularly had to seek out my mentors, and it wasn't the other way around, where my peers, they could just walk up to our normal college professor and there's an instant connection. And so I'm going somewhere where I know I can make an impact early and often really excites me, invigorates me to really want to serve at my service institution.
I haven't worked at one, so I'm open to going back. I'm thinking it's an opportunity that everybody should experience. I told everybody when I first went to work at Philander, I was like, everything I learned in the classroom went out the window. It's pretty much a whole different ball field. I was kind of adamant about like hand holding. It was like, you kind of have to help the student there, right? And even as a person of, you don't identify as a person at an institution, you can still work there. The students will see if you're true, if you're real or fake. If they see that you're a real individual, they'll work with you. If they see that you're a fake, they're going to walk over you.
Being quite honest, like reading the book, I can honestly see myself working at any MSI. And I say that because every chapter that you read, it's an overarching thing. Family, community, mentorship, networking. And it's really a supportive vibe, but the downside of that though, for HBCUs, what I have experienced is, and I hate to put it this way, but it's realistic, sometimes we coddle our Black men and Black women, and we hold their hands a lot, and sometimes it's a disadvantage to them when they get out into the real world, because when you do get that supervisor or that boss, it's just kind of like,